السلام عليكم. اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Dear brothers and sisters, I decided to start this series of what I hope are sessions, I'm not going to call them lectures, to try to shed a new light on the way we understand our beloved religion, Islam. And the reason that I find this to be very dear to my heart is that I have spent close to over 3 decades trying to find the truth. And unfortunately, through the masajid that we have, with the a'imma that we have, and this turath that we have, I feel like I still found myself lost. Even though I had been trying my best, I've done what I thought every Muslim should do, including Hajj and so on, but there is something that was somewhat empty that I found to be a calling, if you will, that somebody has to try to delve into and try to address. And with the advent of social media, I believe that with all the bad that it might have, we have a lot of good that is happening. The reason I say that is that for years, certain institutions had a monopoly over information. And unfortunately, whether it's intentional or not intentional, and that could be a subject of another learning session that we hopefully will discuss these issues together, there is a disconnect between what Allah wanted from mankind from the day that He said للملائكة, to the angels, إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة, I am creating a successor on earth. To have that as the theme of why Allah wants a Khalifa on earth explains a lot of what we will find in this book, in the Quran. And once we start reading with a sort of new way of understanding, and it's critical that we understand here that we work in this project, inshallah, together. Our hope is that we will find the truth, and this truth, which is in the Quran, undoubtedly, will guide our lives to peace and serenity, and eventually to Jannah, inshallah. The problem that I have been able to only in the last couple of years put my, finger on is that we have been so bombarded with misinformation that we find ourselves very far from this kitab. And we find ourselves deriving a lot of our rules and a lot of our fiqh from other books as opposed to the book. Now, I respect Turath because I know that there is a huge confrontation between those that feel that anybody that speaks outside of their Turath is not really knowledgeable. And of course, this sort of attack becomes, more visible when you are not exactly a graduate of specific institutions. However, Allah says that this kitab is hudan linnas, which means it is the salvation and the guidance to people. So Allah wants me and you, whatever you do for a living, to be able to find the answers in this kitab. And therefore, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam did not ever claim to have anything that he brought from himself. He always wanted to repeat and highlight the fact that his mission is al-balagh, to transmit this message to people. وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ. So this obligation, alayhi salatu wasalam, he did perform it in the best of ways, and that's why we owe him a huge amount of gratitude. However, we always have to remember that Allah is the person that sent the message, and Allah is the person who wanted this message to be received by people and to be applied to their lives. Now, we understand that this kitab is rahmah lil alameen. It's a mercy for all people. In fact, alameen in Arabic means the aqil, humans and non-humans. So this rahmah, this mercy applies to everybody and applies to non-humans such as animals or things as the environment, as it is greatly a concern of ours today. Now, the Prophet also is the last messenger. So there is also that issue of khatamiyya, which is this is the final word and the final message from Allah. So that in of itself is a big deal. The reason it's a big deal is that we have to assume that this risala has to be and has to basically encompass everything that we need for our lives now. Therefore, we always say that the Quran is mu'jiz, it is miraculous, because it's for every time and every place. في لكل مكان وزمان. So when we say that, we have to actually read the ayat and always say صدق الله العظيم with the eyes of somebody who really sees the truth. Not just because you are reading the kitab, you say صدق الله العظيم as just a matter of routine. You really have to think about what you're reading. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Don't they examine and re-examine the ayat in the Quran? يَتَدَبَّرُونَ means you actually analyze those ayat. So what I have found also is that in the translation from the original language of the Quran, which is Arabic, there is a huge disconnect with what our human evolution should offer to us as further understanding of the ayat. And that's why we find that a lot of our so-called religion has been stuck in the 7th century. And therefore, the translation is also stuck in the 7th century. And I think people that speak English and other languages are the ones that probably end up paying the price of not having immediate full access to the right meaning of the ayat. Of course, it's a fard ayn, which is an obligation for every person to do their homework on their own. However, when I look at translations, for example, the one I have before me here is by Abdullah Yusuf Ali. I read translations that I feel need that those translations need to be updated. And when you say updated, of course, a lot of people will immediately ask, what does that mean, to update? We're not updating the ayat. We are updating the translation. Because the Prophet ﷺ did not translate the Quran, because he knew that this kitab is for every place and every time. And therefore, every generation has the obligation to read and reread these ayats and try to find the meaning as it applies to them. And therefore, we appreciate everything that people that came before us have done and what they have given to us. And we ask Allah to reward them for what they've done, for the hard work and the thinking that was involved, and what a lot of these ulama, these scholars, have gone through, and a lot of them paid dearly with their lives because they wanted to make sure that they speak the truth. However, their understanding of these ayat, as great as it was at that time, their time, cannot logically be enough for us now in the 21st century. That is not to say that we are creating a new religion. That's absolutely not what I am saying now. What I am saying is that we have to always read this kitab with fresh eyes, because with the generation that utilizes technology, we have access to information and knowledge that was not available to people before us. And what they had at that time was not available to people before them. And that is part of the sunan al-kawniyya for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is part of this evolution that we have gone through. And in fact, it's embedded in the first ayat that came from Allah. Iqra'A. Iqra' bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. خلق الإنسان من علق. اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم. Iqra' means read, but it doesn't mean just read. It means learn. And that's basically what I try to, reiterate, that we have to define and retranslate certain words in a bigger context. And the bigger context here is that humans have been created to learn and to acquire knowledge, to be what I started this session by saying, to be a Khalifa on this earth, to be a successor on this earth. And Allah has given us the tools, and those tools are being developed on daily basis. And therefore, we are creating the knowledge that is meant and intended by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wallahu a'lam bimashi'atu wa bi'iradatu, that we will have that ability. Because when the angels said to Allah, you are creating a successor that will create havoc on earth, what did Allah says? He said, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. I know what I'm doing. I know what you do not know. And then he taught Adam al-asma'. Then عرضهم على الملائكة. Then he showed the malaika a clinical experiment how this new creature, Adam, was able to learn and to have attributes that the angels themselves did not have. The angels said to Allah that all they do is نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. We worship you and do tasbih. But Allah wants us to do more than that. And therefore, when we talk about Islam, it's not just salah. In fact, salah is one of those things that brings you closer to Allah, but it's not what makes you a Muslim. There is more that makes you a Muslim. And part of that is for you to play that role that Allah has ordained for you from the beginning of times. Now, in this new series of sessions, I hope that we can together find that this book is the epitome of the power of reason, because it in fact explains everything in a way that we can actually today, with our understanding of our 21st century institutions and 21st century knowledge, we can find that this is still the best manual. Now, remember that Allah started the series of messages that were sent to mankind with miracles, with a lot of miracles, and those were miracles that were felt. For example, Sayyidina Musa, obviously, from the beginning, he was able to see and witness miracles with the Sahara, miracles with the Asa, miracles with what Allah sent to Qawm Fir'aun, miracles when he was able to part the sea. All these things will show that those miracles are in fact, I don't want to say small in comparison, but they are basically only preliminary, because the ultimate miracle was this kitab, because it in fact packaged all those miracles in a way that we have learned about what happened to other messengers of Allah, but yet we have this ever evolving miracle. Now, there are words that we need to understand and re-understand, and everything that I'm saying today will be lower level of knowledge compared to what somebody will say 100 years from now. And they can certainly revisit what I may say, if it's of any value or substance, and correct it. And that is fine, because that's the way evolution happens. The problem that we have is that we think that everything stopped with this turath. In fact, if things stopped at any point, They stopped when Allah sent that last ayah, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. Today I have given you the full deen, and I've given you the full blessing, and I have accepted Islam as your religion. Now, that is a clear ayah that the deen was complete on that day في حجة الوداع للرسول عليه الصلاة والسلام. So anything that came after that is ijtihad and is human work product that we appreciate because we as humans build upon knowledge that we put together. But we have to remember that the deen was complete, and therefore in this book we should be able to find everything. And in fact, we're not going to find enough because there's more than generations in the future will be able to find. I will give examples in the next meeting, inshallah, and I will give examples of how important it is to understand, not just in English, but even in Arabic, the difference between words in this kitab that could make a huge difference for your understanding of what Allah wants you to know about this world. What this means is that we will find that there is a difference between nazzala wa anzala. We will find that there are differences between the word ab and walid, even though we tend to have this, I guess it's a human tendency to lump things and understand them as if they are the same. But in this kitab, هذا الكتاب لا ريب فيه, it has no doubt. Everything is so punctual and so accurate that we have to study it with those eyes of tadabbur to see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not just use words as a sha'ar, as a poet, even though a lot of people like to say, oh, this book was sent to the Arabs because Allah wanted to challenge them. This book was not sent to the Arab, it was sent to mankind. So that means that yes, maybe there could be fasaha, there is ibda', there is glamour, and there is the proof of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to use the fewest words to express the biggest of ideas. But there's also more, because it actually talks about the laws of this universe. And we will find that there is a method to these ayats. Now, I will tell you on a personal level, I'm not a sheikh. In fact, I'm an attorney. So my training was not in the Azhar, but my training was in critical legal thinking. What that means is that you have to try to use the words that you need to express an idea in a way that will effectuate the most precise meaning that you want to articulate. What this means is that you don't just throw words out there if you want to be a good lawyer who appeals cases in court and who writes briefs. And what I have personally, and I say this with humility and with the utmost respect, and لله المثل الأعلى, Allah has the best of examples and is the best of examples. This book is so precise that every word, every letter is intended in a way that if you change it, a lot will change in the meaning. And therefore, always treat it with that respect. Don't just read it as they tell you sometimes it's all about tilawa. No. You have to really think about the ayat. And I feel, and I wanna finish with this. I feel that my role is to try to convey this to English speakers, and that's why I chose to say this in English, because I feel that they have been disadvantaged in not understanding a lot of the words in the way that they should be understood. And I don't claim to have more knowledge than other people, but I believe that I myself, after almost 30 years, have come upon a new way of understanding this kitab, which reaffirmed my belief and love in this religion and for this religion. So it's not that I am discovering something new. And in fact, a lot of what I'm saying is based on new thinkers who are coming to these conclusions. So I will not claim that I've come up with everything that I'm going to try to relay in these sessions. But what I'm saying is that I will try to give you a new and fresh understanding of words in the Quran that will explain a lot of things. Now, I said this in a very vague way, right? But what does that mean in reality? Okay? Questions that you ask yourself and questions that your family, your child, your brother, your sister could ask you about things that are at the core of what humans ask about their existence. Is everything maktub? What is qada wal qadar? What is fate? Inna ad-dina 'inda Allah al-Islam. The religion that Allah accepts is Islam. Does that mean that other people, if they are believers in Allah, but they're not Muslim in our way of understanding Islam, does that mean that they go to hell? Does that mean that there's no hope for them? We will find the answers to those questions in this book in a different way than we have and had been taught by a lot of scholars that came before us, because there is always a way to find the truth so long as you try hard and you are sincere and you do this with ikhlas. The biggest problem that we face is that we do a lot of taqleed, a lot of imitation. And the problem with imitation is that it takes away the creativity. As Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi said, people that do taqleed, they are wasting their reasoning and their mind and the power of their creativity. So it is important that we don't just blindly say we want to do as others did, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He did in fact order us not to do that, because a lot of people say بل نتبع ما ألفينا عليه آباءنا وإذا قيل لهم اتبعوا ما أنزل الله, if they are told follow what Allah has said, they say no, we will follow what our parents and our grandparents have taught us. أولو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون. And in a different ayah, لا يعلمون شيئا ولا يهتدون. Even if their parents do not know and do not think, because thinking and knowing are connected. And for us to understand this kitab, we have to continue reasoning. So I hope that we will embark on this journey together in sessions that, bi'Iznillah, you will find to be helpful to you as I found to be helpful to me. And I hope that we will have the interaction for us to study the Quran together, because this is a book that we all have our experiences that can be reflected upon through these ayats. So, Jazakumullah khair for listening, and I hope that you will find a benefit in these sessions, and I hope that we can spread and share the knowledge from all the scholars and from all the input that people will put into this, because I believe that this could be, inshallah, a new beginning in our journey for knowledge. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.